Hello, everyone. Lucy Heavens here with another episode of CMO Therapy, a podcast that's hopefully going to help you navigate your way through your marketing journey. Because let me tell you, I get it. Being a marketing leader is no walk in the park. In each episode, we dive headfirst into the world of marketing, where tight budgets, fierce competition, and uncertainty are just the beginning of the rollercoaster ride. But guess what? You are not alone in this journey. Why go solo when you can tap into the powerhouse of insights from some of the most awesome marketing leaders in the game? And look, the title of the podcast might include the word therapy, but we are not just talking about challenges here. We are tackling them head on. So join us as we deep dive into the nitty gritty, share war stories, and unlock secret strategies. And get ready for no holds barred conversations because sometimes I have no filter. So if you are a chief marketing officer, a marketing lead, or someone just looking to up their marketing game, then I am so glad that you are here with us today. And I am very glad to have with me today the very awesome Wade Coleman. Wade, can you give a little bit of an introduction to the audience, please?
Sure. So I'm Wade Coleman. I'm head of brand and content strategy at Fiserv. We're a global fintech and payments company. We have many famous marketing alumni with us, including yours truly.
I honestly, I was trying to work out how long ago it was that we worked together, and then I wanted to stop because it came a little bit uncomfortable.
Yes, it does creep up on you.
Let's not go there. So the title of the podcast that we landed on was Brand Voice, Not a Bot Voice. And today's episode is definitely a therapy session, or at least it is going to be for me, but for marketing leaders, because I think AI has unleashed a content identity crisis. Let's call it that. So yes, it can help teams move faster. It can be brilliant. Okay, I get that. But it's also given the world, I think, this tsunami of bland, samey, looks like looks fine on LinkedIn type content that says nothing and basically just makes everyone sound like everyone else. So today we are going to get into the real stuff with Wade, what AI should be doing, what it absolutely should keep its hands off of, and how CMOs can stop their brand voice from being quietly murdered by beige automation. Let's get into it. Let's start with I like to start with the spicy question to get us going. So what does AI content, or why does AI content feel so I suppose soulless, if that's maybe not too harsh, when content marketing is meant to feel make you feel very emotional and feel very human?
That is such a great question, I think, and I love the way that you put it because it is an identity crisis. And um, to go back to your question, I think the reason it feels that way is it's us. We're the problem. And to paraphrase Taylor Swift. Um, and I think it's because a lot of the same reasons people are poor marketers or poor communicators in the beginning. And the difference now is that we have this weapon of mass communication that can go out to everyone and generate so much content. And make no mistake, I'm like extremely bullish on AI in general and what it can do for marketing and what it can do for helping people communicate better. We're just in the very early days, and so many of the things that are coming up, we're working through and creating the rules right now. And so, I think that's what we're seeing. Just yesterday, I saw a story. I don't know if you saw this. The Pope issued. I don't know if this was an official statement, but the story was that he had reached out to his flock because so many of the priests were using AI generated sermons, and that it goes back to your soulless. There's a concern that there is no soul to it, and I think that's really interesting to me because it does get to the point of if it's good and it helps people connect, is it soulless or not? And it really comes down to the rigor that we have. Are we putting our soul into it? And when we are, it's great. And when we aren't, it shows up as bland.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I mean, sometimes it's, I don't know, like sometimes it's not even just the kind of the blandness, it's Well, I don't know. That's a question, actually. When you're reading through some things, like some things you do pick up and straight away that it is AI generated. And I'm not talking about, individual kind of characters here, like the M dash and, all of that sort of thing. And I mean, literally just reading through it, you can tell by the tone that it's not written by the company or the person or whatever. Like, but what is that? What is it that people are detecting? Do you have a feeling for that?
I think that they're detecting lack of soul, to your point. And I think there are some things that are the tells. And I think the M dash, and I was a fan of the M dash, and now every time I have to look at it, um, I do a double take. Are they going to think that I'm doing that? But even when you get beyond that, there are a lot of phrasing, the comparative conjunction. It's either this or that. There tends to be a pattern to how AI writes, and so we detect that. I think that will slowly start to go away. As AI gets better, and you're already seeing it last night, super timely. I took a New York Times, so if I don't know if you need to be a subscriber to do this, but on the New York Times app, there is a story about you go through a quiz and you have to detect whether it's AI or human, and it gives you 5 examples of writing. And one is from fantasy writing, another from a novel, and then poetry. And 4 out of the 5 examples, I picked Claude instead of the human.
Wow.
And that was, I think, but it goes back to the New York Times is putting a lot of time and soul into the writing that they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's where we detect, we have inherent built-in bullshit detectors, and that goes off when it's not real. At the same time, it can feel really real when you are putting that into it. And so I think that the tells will get harder over time, which will be to detect, but that's going to be something that's going to be a challenge as well, because you'll get halfway through it and then realize there's no content to it.
Yeah, that's so interesting about that. The kind of the quiz. What
It
is like? What do
it's
you?
like the taste test of the Coca-Cola, where you go
Yeah,
through. I was a little shocked that I picked 4 out of 5.
and that's the thing. I think there is this kind of, I call it like AI shaming, isn't there? There is a bit of kind of like shame about it, isn't there? Like, when you're reading something or someone doesn't want to kind of hold their hands up and admit, actually, I did use AI to help me to write this piece. Which
Yeah.
they shouldn't really feel that, right?
No, it's like a Ozempic, where people are using that to get healthier and lose weight, but they don't want to admit it. And I have zero problems admitting it. I use it all the time. It actually doesn't save me a lot of time, because I tend to spend a lot of time on just basic communications, getting them right. But it helps me write more iteratively. It helps me write in a more condensed way. And so I think we'll get past the shaming. I think what people see is low effort posts. And I think this also goes back to, a lot of times we will look at it and make a value judgment about, this person is very lazy and they just pressed a button to do this. And a lot of times they are people who don't know the difference, and they're poor evaluators of what good looks like. And over time that will start to improve. It's very much like the early days of social media too, where there was a lot of that type of activity. And then as you go on, right now LinkedIn is pretty challenging to read, because it's the full range of amazing to awful.
Yeah, yeah. And where do you see AI being kind of genuinely really good, really useful, really brilliant?
Yeah, I think that the places where I'm seeing it most helpful to me are summarization. So when we have a large data set, and whether it's client surveys, or looking into data coming from research surveys or other places, it's so great at helping find that needle in the haystack. I think the places that you can look at longer form content and get ideas for how to make that into shorter pieces. The places that we're starting to really work it into our workflows are those automated repetitive things. So like brand reviews and copy editing, that first pass, being able to go through and do the things that a human proofreader might not be able to do so quickly. We still have human eyes on each thing, and that's an important thing for us. But transactional communications, the places where we're not using it directly for editing it is the long form thought leadership, the places where you really want the human unique point of view coming in. There are places, you can still use it to assist in developing that, and transcripts and things like that are really helpful for doing that, but you still want that at the root of it. You need that human voice in it. And so those are the places that we're seeing it most right now. I think that as it starts to evolve, we'll see those use cases continue to change.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I like what you were saying about the kind of the summarizing. I think is a really key one. There was a company I was speaking to recently that produces this really big report every year, and then they use AI to break that report up into kind of lots of different pieces, and you can do that literally at the touch of a button now, whereas that might have taken quite a lot longer before. But any then kind of pieces like blogs, or actually they turned it into a podcast series using Notebook LLM, and all of those sorts of things.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. The Notebook LLM, I remember the first time I saw that, and I was like, wow, this was, I put up a blog post that we had done just to test and see, and it was amazing. And I think, those are all things that are cool. I mean, I don't know, the thing that I'm challenged with right now is it is really great at summarizing and getting more content out there. Um, but we don't always want to get more content out there. And I think that's a challenge that probably the biggest challenge right now is it democratizes how many people can give you plans and content, and you spend a lot of time doing that. Robert Rose, he's the famous content strategist, and he had a post on LinkedIn a few weeks back, and it was about this idea inflation, where there are so many new ideas being created that it's just challenging to work through them all. And I mean, colleagues that I don't know if you're seeing the same thing. I'm sure you probably are, but and speaking to a colleague who was in software development, same thing is happening there, where they're getting requirements documents from people who maybe aren't typically doing those, and they're going halfway through and finding out, oh wow, this was AI generated, and we're going to spend a lot more work to actually bring it up to speed. Are you feeling that as well? I mean, are you seeing that type?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I think this is the thing, like, with I think the theory is there, with so a lot of the companies that I talk to are actually using now their own company AI sort of systems, whether it's,
Hmm.
internal, like whether it's a Gemini or something like that, to create like gems or chat their own agents, where they're training them in their kind of like tone of voice, and obviously uploading all of their existing content to really try and make it consistent, with their brand. But that takes time to build up. The first lot of things that come out aren't necessarily the finished article, and then you've still got to spend time on it. And I think that's the danger at the moment. People aren't investing enough time in all of that, because they're thinking about it, they're entering into it as a kind of a quick fix, rather than a like with a person, when you take somebody on
Hmm.
in your team, in your organization, you don't expect everyone on day one when they walk through those doors to be up to speed on everything. You've got to invest time onboarding them. And I think that piece is maybe like missing a little bit. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it totally is. And I think that because it sounds so good sometimes, and my first reaction a lot of times was, oh, they're lazy. And it really, after looking at it and understanding my own experience, where, I'm looking at things that maybe I'm not an expert in, it sounds really good. And I may not know the difference, and I'm passing it on as quality work, when really we just need more education on reading between the lines and understanding that, if you really don't know, then you should double check it, or you should at least caveat your work before it goes through. I feel like sometimes it's like you're watching the videos on Instagram, and it's like a polar bear walking around, and then you realize halfway through, oh, this is AI. That's how the feeling you get when you're like, discover halfway through something that it's not real. And but I've done it myself, and so I want to give people a little bit of grace, but we also need to give them training.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, taking that kind of analogy, maybe taking it a little bit too far. But as you're onboarding someone, it's quite interesting. Like when you're new into an organization and you're asking your new manager and your new colleagues like questions about the product, about the solutions, try and learn more. You're constantly questioning them and having that conversation with them. Whereas sometimes I think, we put questions into, ChatGPT or, whatever, and then whatever the answer that comes back, we almost take that as gospel rather than
Yeah.
questioning it back, like trying to test it out. I think that worries me a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, it's the same thing with doctors where, obviously it's a great tool that can go and look at x-rays and help them identify, things that humans can't see as easily or as accurately, but do we lose that skill of doing it? And so, fintech, I mean, I had been in technology my entire career when I joined Fiserv. I was surprised at how difficult and how much time it took to really come up to speed to what the industry language was, the nuances of how these systems work. And it takes time and input. And I think we lose some of that work that you put in to get the experience. And, that'll be something that as we evolve with AI, it'll be interesting because that it's going to be an ongoing issue to make sure that we do get that experience.
Yeah, definitely. You referenced LinkedIn a minute ago about, sort of we are drowning a little bit in kind of content there, the good and the bad. One of the things that I always kind of look for when I'm scrolling through the feed is actually, I do look for the people. I look for the people that I know because I know that actually reading a piece of content from them, I trust them. I trust what they say, and I appreciate their opinion, so I want to read it. And that's the thing that I feel like is kind of my worry, I suppose, where ChatGPT is or AI is we're losing that kind of distinctive voice from people and opinion, which is what everybody loves. And I think you said when we had
Yeah.
a chat before about you said I wrote it down. You said ChatGPT is a shortcut to sounding like everyone else. So yeah,
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that it goes back to you're looking for the human voice that and you're looking for interest in things that expand your knowledge. I think where we get off track is when we're bullshitting people, and bullshit is the enemy. It is you when you start creating things that erode your brand trust when you're reading through it. If it's something that, especially things like thought leadership, where you really expect that you've invested time in something that the opinion is going to help you, and then not only do you start discounting what's coming from that source, the algorithm within the platforms that you're using is going to begin to discount that. And so I think on that level, hopefully it will begin to change how much we see. I think from my standpoint, a strong brand foundation, really knowing what the brand voice is, it and having people echo that through their own expertise is what we're looking for. And so the Fiserv brand voice is engaged advocate. And that's really useful for me to walk through when I'm evaluating content. Does this sound like a friend who is giving you balanced advice, who is not trying to sell you something, who's not trying to have a false sense of urgency? And obviously, the type of communication comes into it as well, where you expect a brochure or a sales material to be a little more promotional, but you do want to make sure that it's appropriate for the tone of what you're communicating. And so, having that foundation, I think, is really important. That helps people as a guiding principle for how it should sound. And without that, you do begin to sound like everyone else, and that's the antithesis of what you want to do.
Yeah. So that's the problem really, is not having those guiding sort of principles or whatever to start off with. And maybe those guiding principles when they were written weren't in the AI age. Maybe we need to go back and have a look at those. Hi there, quick breather while your brain connects the dots. If you're enjoying CMO therapy, please hit that follow button and leave a cheeky little rating. 5 stars if you're feeling generous, or 4 if you're British and emotionally reserved. Either way, it helps more than you think. Right, let's crack on.
Yeah, and I think that's an opportunity too, because now at scale you can control for some of those things like brand voice. I think the area that the other part of that is having a really strong understanding of the audience that you're communicating to, and you know when you're before you go out with that communication, that what their pain points are. And so when you see, you can really tell when something is written for a specific person because it broadly appeals to everybody at that point. It's kind of that paradox. And so I think that part of having knowledge and many of the things that are taking up time and review, it's where they don't go in with those inputs.
Yeah, definitely. So we have, if you have the kind of the guiding principles, I mean, nowadays, obviously, with AI, again, you've got now so many people across the organization that can now spin up their own kind of content, and everybody, wants to be seen writing things and sounding very clever on LinkedIn. So how far do you take that governance? Like, do you think, is it a case of, having kind of templates and things available for people? Like, what does good look like there?
Yeah, that so Fiserv has been rolling out tons of tools internally to our people, and that's frightening to me. At the same time, that it's like really empowering because it's great to have all of this, and um, within within the tools, the ability to create documents this fast, you also have the ability to now start putting together brand kits where you can apply this across the organization, and you can look at it not just from a marketer standpoint, but from everyone in the company who's creating documents, and you can really take that to different levels. And I think we're in the early stages of being able to control for that. Some of the things that we're seeing, like presentations and other areas where there's a complexity to them in terms of how they're put together. They don't look like finished things that necessarily people would see, but we do have the ability to apply the brand standards down to the color and the having image libraries that not only help with risk from a licensing standpoint, but keep people on brand and give them more options. But the root of it is the training aspect and the training appropriate to who's coming in. And I think that goes back to, we are in the early days, and we're going to have, I think just like social, that's the analogy I go to a lot, because back in the early days, you would see people who would go outside of the brand standards or even outside of what you would expect. And over time, you realize that you don't have control of your brand at that level, and people are going to make mistakes, and you can't apply that with an iron hand, because then what you end up with is people going around those standards to get around it. And there's no replacement for just training and helping people understand the basic fundamentals of communication and what they're trying to do. And I think it's a net positive overall because of the things that you can control for. I think the newer, cooler things in terms of assisted technology that really help coach people before it goes out, and some of the tools in Copilot are great for that now, where it's not just helping me edit it, but it's coaching me on, hey, is this tone right? And using that as an interruption. And I think I want to take that to the next level. So anytime I get an email over a certain length, they're like, no, you can't do that. You got to go back and edit that. So they're working. So I think that's it feels like that's where it's going. I know a lot of the sales tools that are coming out now are more assistive to help people understand where they're going. At the same time, if you try to control every input, it's going to backfire.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I remember back like in the day when we were just kind of trying to get everyone started on social. And I always had a little bit of a problem with the scheduling tools, like the social sort of scheduling tools, because I just used
Hmm.
to think like this is supposed to be a community and a social environment. You don't walk into a networking event with a sheet of paper with 5 conversations that you're going to have with people. It's based off who you meet and then
Yeah.
how you start talking to them, what they say. But yeah, no, it's nice now. I think one of the things I was always advocating for back then when we had these scheduling tools was, look, I can, we can provide you with a bunch of posts for you to schedule, and what I would really urge you to do would be to look at those posts and kind of put them into your own tone of voice, and then also look at what content's on LinkedIn and react to that as well. And I think AI makes you do that more. So
100%. And I mean, it's about being human, and it's
yeah,
not being an automated bot. And for me, it's not a sin to use AI. You really don't want to show up looking like you're using AI, and there's no shame in using it. Is it helping you connect with people and be more human and be your best self? And I think that goes back to what you were just saying. Don't approach it like it's a rote thing that you're trying to achieve a certain goal. It's about connecting with people.
yeah, definitely. You used the word coaching, which I like, and I like to talk about prompts. I am absolutely fascinated. I love watching people use AI and like have a conversation and see actually how they prompt. I just think it tells you a lot. It's almost like a bit of like a personality quiz to see like
Right.
actually how they do it. I'm very conversational. Like I'm almost like it's a friend that I'm talking to, and
Me
I love
too.
the way that it kisses my ass when it comes back. Lucy, that's such an amazing idea. Well done. Like, I do love it. But yeah, how do you think that we should be kind of training marketers, or should we be training marketers with kind of creating prompts and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think this is an area there's got to be some evolution because the dramatic difference in the results that you can get from the different prompts that you use. And I'm just like you. I tend to approach it, very stream of conscious of what's coming out of my head. But now, what we're seeing, like having prompt libraries, being able to pick from the best ones, and you kind of see how they deconstruct it. And I've tried, right now it's not only is it like social, it's like the early days of search because I will have like every chat, I have like Gemini and ChatGPT and Copilot, everything up at the same time. And it's like when there was all these different search engines out there that you were having to use to get to something. And the differences in them, but the dramatic difference in how you structure the prompt. And I think I get better results when I'm very, very precise in it, but I'm not that's not my mode of communication or how I think. And I think what is helpful now, especially for marketers, like when you can embed the framework and take it out of the areas where a few errant words in the prompt can change things, but it really makes the brief more important now because we can deconstruct. Here's the brand voice, and this is embedded in the Jasper or Writer or whatever tool people are using, from a marketing standpoint. Then you take the audience framework, and that's a separate construct that can be applied to it. And then you have the template of the communication that you're working with, and within there, you can break it down to individual questions that are more question oriented. Who is it? What is the goal of this communication? What are the key points? And then you have something that's very structured that gets out something that's repeatable without being, but still gets to the core of what the communication should be. And so that's where I feel like it's going, but it is really haphazard in terms of the results that you get back on prompts today. The one that is one of my favorite, like if you've gone to any event recently, you will notice that there's a lot of transformational session descriptions, and that and then you go to the session and it's a panel discussion. That's fine. Sometimes it doesn't map anywhere close to what was discussed during the meeting. And to me, that's a huge problem because within our own events, making sure, like, the number one problem we see is when there's a disconnect between what people think they're going to get and what they get when they show up. And so making those, more. So we have created just like that for it's a session description app that you go in and put your inputs in, and it helps you based on your brief get something out that's much closer to what you're trying to deliver. And especially when you have speakers who are maybe not full-time, content writers, that becomes an issue. But it's definitely decreased the number of things that people are trying to unlock, like the word unlock, the number of times that I've seen that in session descriptions. So I think that that's where it works really well. I think there's going to be a lot of evolution there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I always say that kind of having the ChatGPT or whatever is kind of like having a little sort of marketing assistant, but very much like a kind of a junior assistant. If you're having a conversation with them, if you ask questions, sometimes it can kind of go off on a little bit of a tangent, right? Like,
Hmm.
start, and then you sort of realize after about 20 minutes, it's like, how did I get here to this part of the conversation? Like, where did we go, where was the fork in the road? And it's very much like that if it's very conversational. I think you're right, like having that template and giving it as much context and information to start off with kind of keeps you on track, right?
Yeah, especially when you're trying to do something at scale. And I think there's also a place for the conversational aspect to it too. It just may not be for the structured outputs that you want to get.
Yeah, definitely. I'd like to ask for your opinion on what you think that kind of AI is doing for the the roles within the team, the content roles within the team now, and what new skill sets are required. What is the role? Are the roles changing? Are we looking for more kind of strategists or AI kind of creative directors, or what do you think the future looks like there?
Yeah, that's been on my mind a lot, just for my own personal career, but otherwise, because I think that it's definitely changing, and I think there's this uh, it seems to be there's this mania in the corporate world overall with looking at the stock market. Each week there's a AI can now replace Salesforce or replace Adobe, and I think that has created, and then Square, had some well publicized layoffs where they laid off like 40% of their company, moving towards AI. And I think there's a lot of nuance underneath some of these things. From a writing perspective, the skill set is definitely changing, and you want, like, the strategist part of it becomes very important, and I think it is an elevated role now, as a in the future. It's more of a hybrid role, I think, because you are looking at just what we were talking about, those outputs, being able to structure it, and being really focused on what the audience part of the story is, and then understanding, what, the how this is going to be delivered. We haven't, I think the part that's the wild card in a lot of this is how AI is changing discovery and search and these other things. So the way that we're, not only is it changing how we're writing and how much we can write, but it's also changing how people consume it, and the answer engines of how they're displaying it. And so and it's kind of it's a really interesting dichotomy, because we're creating a lot more stuff at the same time. What the answer engines are looking for is more quality, and so, diving into that, I think you need a different skill set of a strategist who's looking at all of those inputs, and it will be more hybrid roles. At the same time, I don't think it's any surprise that you're seeing a lot more on LinkedIn, a lot more roles like things for storytellers,
Yeah.
and it goes back to, the you know we're not looking for content, we're looking for meaning, we're looking for education, and things that connect with people. And so I'm not all that worried about the future of the roles themselves, but it's going to adapt and change. And just like every other technology that has come through and it impacted us, I think that all branches were supposed to be gone by now,
Yeah.
and they are continuing to thrive. And but there are different types of interactions that are happening there, and I think it's the same analogy that I would use for content.
Yeah, I love that. Definitely. There was a company I was talking to recently, and they were hiring a new content executive, and part of the interview process was like a little homework assignment. And the homework was actually to use AI to create an article. It was really interesting. But what they asked was they didn't want to see so much the finished article. That wasn't the point to it. They wanted them to show they're working out, the prompts. So that's what they
Right.
had to demonstrate as part of the interview, is what the prompts were. And it was really interesting because the interviews they did, there was two people that were like very, very different in how the prompts they did the prompt in. But it told them a lot about the person, like I was kind of saying earlier, and there was somebody that kind of went the very, structured route, like we were talking about, almost like templated, kind of route. There was another one that made it kind of more like conversational, but yeah, fascinating. It was like really, really interesting.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant, and I think, yeah, I may steal that actually, because it does help you get to, like, you're not hiring necessarily for a specific skill there. You're hiring for curiosity and adaptability, and people
Yeah.
are looking for meaning there. And my software developer friend had mentioned that when they were running through prompting, they were finding that it was the people who were coming to it fresh, not necessarily the most experienced coders. They were the ones that were coming up with the most innovative approaches to doing things within their team. And I thought that was really interesting, because you do need the experience to help you evaluate whether it's good or not. But to get there, you also need folks who are willing to maybe go off script and experiment.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's a real mic drop moment, actually, to kind of finish or wrap up the podcast on. But I love that you just, yeah, what you just said is actually you still need the experience to be able to go back and look at whatever the output is, and make sure that it's kind of hitting the brief at the end of the day. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that's the I think that is for me where we're going to get to, because the fundamental rules haven't changed, even though the technology is moving at breakneck speed.
Yeah, exactly. Brilliant. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. That was really, really interesting. I really enjoyed that chat.
I did
Um,
too. Thank you.
thank you. And yeah, thank you to everybody for listening. Thank you.